microphone. It seems to work.
Dobar dan, it seems to work.
Excellent. Iskrena dobrodošlica vsem prisotnim. I bid you welcome as well, Vincent Liegey. Beseda rast se kaže kot fetiš, rešitelj, ki prinaša odgovor za vse težave naših družb, ne da bi sploh podrobneje opisali njen smisel, ne da bi videli, da je odgovorna za krizo, v kateri živimo. Primat ekonomije širom po svetu nas potiska v vedno večji brezup, bedo, nasilje, kaos. Ali zato, da bi rešili sveti finančni sistem, sekamo ude prihodnosti družbe z drastičnimi posegi v proračun za izobraževanje, kulturo, šolstvo in okolje, zdravstvo, ter vse bolj neobrzdanim ropanjem naravnih virov. Zmoremo izstopiti iz kapitalizma, iz religije, ekonomije, denarja, financ. Zmoremo, še pomembneje, bržčas dekolonizirati pojmovne predstave. Se sploh želimo osvoboditi orodij zasužnjevanja. Projekt Od-rasti podvomi o nalikovani potrošniški družbi in predlaga, da zavremo proces plačljivosti na vseh področjih našega življenja. Z vizijo nenasilne družbe, v kateri manjšina ne izkorišča večine in večina ne izkorišča narave, ponudi mehak izhod iz dušečega objema. Politično, demokratično si moramo prisvojiti ekonomski sistem, pravi Vincent z ostalimi avtorji. Vincent, we no longer need to believe that prosperity is intimately intertwined with the growing gross national product. What we most certainly need to do is to question primacy of growth at all costs. After all, endless growth righteously appears as a silly notion, since we do live on a planet with limited resources, right?
Yeah, I think we are facing the physical, environmental, ecological limits to growth, but I would say that we are mostly facing the cultural limit to growth, and I'm coming from Western Europe, from France, and I think France, the societies around France, has never been materially so rich and has never been humanly, culturally so poor. And that's why we have to question and to put back human values in the center of our political life, and to get rid of only profit-oriented approaches, to get rid of only quantitative approach or analysis of how do we value our society and everything. And with degrowth, it's what we try to question. We try to question with a provocative slogan. I don't know whether it makes sense in English or in other languages, because it was already difficult to find a word like that in France, with décroissance in France. We try to question a lot of implicit beliefs. First in the GDP, in economics, in profits, and I would say a lot of implicit beliefs that to have a meaningful life, it should always grow, always more, always further, always quicker, always bigger and stuff like that. And I think we should get rid, we should decolonize of our imaginary of with always more pulsion, and to start to look at the society with other glasses, in opening our eyes, or I don't know, and try to understand that the society is much more complex than only materialistic approach and that only quantitative approach. To put back in the center of our political organization what is conviviality, autonomy, solidarity, non-violent communication, direct democracy, meaningful life, meaningful activities, to question what do we produce, how do we produce it, for what kind of use. And it's what we try to question in our book, and try to also show some paths, how we can get rid of all this addiction to growth, all this addiction to this model of society, and to start to implement democratic, serene transition toward a new model of society, or new models of society. I think not only ones, but also biodiversity. New models of society which will be sustainable, of course, but also desirable. And I think we need more than ever, in particular, when I think about what's happened Friday evening in Paris, we need more ever to reappropriate some hope, to reappropriate positive narrative, and not only to live in fear, in protecting ourselves, in reacting against the violence, against the barbarian, against what's happening all around the world, but reappropriate hope. And hope, I hope that it's what we managed to do with that book, and to implement discussion, debate, and also to open our minds and open ourselves to look at the future in a positive way.
Our interest-based monetary system is not a natural organism, as we know. It is an artificial construct designed by human beings. Its current design postulates a totally unnatural growth pattern, as you have mentioned, so-called exponential growth even. In nature, runaway growth ends with destruction. Money is obviously subject to the same rule. The system ultimately collapses. Now there is an important exclamation mark to Degrowth Manifesto: Unconditional Autonomy Allowance. A right to life instead of a right to work. Would unconditional autonomy allowance be ignoring the labour market completely? I'm wondering. And is UAA paving the way for actual degrowth of inequality? And how so?
Yeah, it's degrowth, and the central proposal that we have in this book is really is constructed based on what we could observe in history of civilization. And when we speak about market, I will speak about Karl Polanyi, who is one of the person who really inspired the degrowth movement. In particular, his books and writings about how neoliberalism or capitalism was violently imposed not so long ago on our society, and how a society organized only around market economy is something quite unique. When we look at the history of civilization, or when we look at our civilization before we entered into this dynamic of neoliberalism, we had market, but market was only a part of our life. Market was only a side part of our life. We had a lot of other values on which we took decision, on which we had political decision, we had tradition, we had cultural exchange, we had other type of economy, like reciprocity economy, and not only market-oriented or profit-oriented economy. And what we try to do is to go back, I would say, to just human dynamic in a society. And I think nowadays we have a very central toxic concept in our head, which is economics. We are unable to think, to value, to understand, to politically discuss what's happening around and what kind of decision we take outside of economics. We manage to invent this very violent absurdity to say that because of rationality, we have to destroy our school system, because we have a public debt. And it's something, when we look at history, it's unbelievable. Where all the society, all the civilization in history were organized in a way that you implement social dynamics or tradition and everything to protect the lives of the future generation. And now we have a tool, so-called rational, called economics, where we will destroy the hope and the life of future generation in the name of rationality. And I think we should get rid of this type of approaches, and what we try to present with unconditional autonomy allowance, it's on one hand new dynamics to implement economic, social, institutional reforms, to put back economics in its right place. But more than that, we want to have a tool which will be like a transition tool, where I think the main goal is to implement dynamics in the society, where we start to re-question ourselves. We start to question, why would I go to this shop to buy those things? What is behind? Does it make really sense that I buy things made, but I don't really need, made in this condition, far away in the world, exploiting children, destroying the environment and everything. And how we can switch to another approach when I will implement locally dynamics to produce what we really need in a sustainable way, to exchange it, not only to make profit, but to have some interaction with each other, some trust, some solidarity and everything, or even some argument to disagree. I think it's a part of the life. And also to implement these local dynamics, but connect it to the rest of the world, because the world has been globalized, and you cannot deglobalize the world. So we need what we call a type of open relocalization, to relocalize and to stay open, and to keep solidarities and institutions on different levels, based on the logic of subsidiarity, to take the right decision with the communities we will have to face the impact of this decision. And unconditional autonomy allowance is really an idea. It's not a tool which have to be applied just like that and everything, but it's an idea to implement discussion, to really question what do we produce, how do we produce it, for what kind of use.
The concept of degrowth encompasses anti-consumerist, anti-productivist, anti-capitalist, anti-ideological ideas and perspectives. What tools of social change and ultimately social justice do you have in mind?
We have different type of tools, and I think that's what is interesting in the degrowth approach, that we don't take one problem outside of the rest. If we speak about inequalities, I think inequalities is connected to our economic system, is connected to our education system, is connected to our consumption system, it's connected to other problem what we face with environment, with imperialism, with illegal wars what we make all around the world and everything, with post-colonialist system and everything. So everything is interconnected. And if we only speak about one of the problems, we could provide solution which could have a bad impact or side effect on other problem and come back on the problem we want to face. And it's what we can see that when we speak about inequalities or unemployment in our society, mainstream politicians or economics would say that we need growth. And just as after will arise the question about climate change, and they will say, yeah, we have this problem that we should consume less. We should use less energy, which is already a contradiction with the first assumption. And what we do with degrowth, say now we don't have this problem of climate change on one hand, or inequalities and unemployment on the other hand. We have a global interconnected crisis problem, and we should connect the dots to understand, taking the problem from the roots, what's really happening, and provide solution which would be meaningful. And there are always different type of ways to solve the problem. There is one when you try to put some palliative solution, and you don't really attack the roots. And what we do with degrowth is not to put some palliative solution. For example, if you speak about unemployment, a solution, what we do with degrowth is to question what is our job, what is work, how our work labor system is organized, and how we can switch not to a society where unemployment is still a problem, but switch to a society where we appropriate meaningful activities. We organize social dynamics where we don't work anymore, but we have activities. And the same with inequalities, the same with our relationship to our environment. And it's, I think, very, very important, all this epistemological approach or multidimensional approach of degrowth. It's not it's to get rid of this type that we have an economic expert, you have an environmentalist expert, you have a sociologist expert and everything. But we should put that all together and rethink all together how to have meaningful life, how to implement social dynamics for more democracy, for more participation, for repoliticization, for more also do-it-yourself production, for a bigger democratic control on the institution what we have, on the economic systems, and not only one market, different one, which could be also reciprocity or economic system based on free usage, of meaningful usage of some goods and everything.
Is today's society able, or better yet, willing to participate in a completely different distribution system leading to new solidarity? Are we the people prepared?
It's a very good question, because there are a lot of very interesting indicators or surveys or facts showing that a big part of our society will be ready to switch to another model of society. For example, just one, there is that survey made recently in France showing that around 50 or more than 50% of the people are unhappy with their job, with their everyday life, and would switch to something more meaningful if they could. 50%. And we speak about one of the richest society, and I think a society which is among still the less touched by the crisis. If we can speak about crisis, because since I'm born we speak about crisis, so I think it's more complex than that. And you have this type of indicators. Also, there are also interesting dynamics in the society. When you see some part of the people in Western societies, and also here, consume differently. Don't buy always more and more and more things, but start to be in dynamics to share, to recycle, to reuse, which is also a sign. And also you have some other dynamics, and I think it's very interesting, and it's central in our book in the Degrowth Project. When everywhere in the world you see it's still minority people, but you see very inspiring, interesting local initiative with people who self-organize themselves to reappropriate the production, to reappropriate the tools, the do-how, also to invent new ways to produce. I think particular about a new type of agriculture with agroforestry, agroecology, permaculture and everything. We also experiment new economic system, like with local currency, with space to share for free different things. And also experiment new ways to take decisions together. It's very low scale, it's minority, but you have a dynamic showing that alternatives are already here, they are working quite well. People involved in this alternative reappropriate meaningful life. Usually when I am always amazed when I visit such alternatives, and I am also personally involved in such alternatives, that the people, it's not easy to implement an alternative. People are working a lot, are suffering a lot and everything, but they are happy. You see people who look like not stressed like the people you meet in the Parisian metro, for example, when you go by a metro in Paris and everything. So I think there are very interesting trends in the society, and the question is really about where are the blockades to make all the other people would follow the same path, to make a step and go ahead. And with the Degrowth Project, we try to suggest different type of reforms or narrative to push, to make this grassroots movement extend.
The Holy Trinity of Tomorrow, or Degrowth, the Green New Deal and the Solidarity Economy. Could it be? Could that be the new Holy Trinity of Tomorrow? That is the Holy Trinity of Tomorrow.
I think the degrowth is a part, is one of the narrative, of the thinking, of the debate, participating to the construction of this new paradigm. Degrowth is not new. It's something on one hand quite frightening, on the other hand quite interesting, that very often we say with my co-writers that we didn't invent anything. If you look at the literature, in particular from the 1960s, 70s, most of the ideas what we have in this book, most of the questions what we have in this book were already there, debated in the society, were already written. And we can even go further in the past. If we go to, when we speak about democracy, we are quite well influenced by Cornelius Castoriadis, who was also himself influenced by Greek philosophy, by Aristotle. So we don't invent anything. And I think that history is something which is not linear. History is something which is not predictable. And I think that in our societies we always have some trends, going to one direction, going to another direction, coming back and everything. And Degrowth participates to construct or to keep going in this emancipatory tradition or dynamics, what we have maybe for centuries and maybe since Enlightenment. I think it's one more step. And to keep going in questioning what was the mistake of this model of society. And maybe we had to make these mistakes to understand things that we could write but not really live ourselves and to understand it better. And to build, I would say, on the ruins, or on this model of society, of development and everything, to keep what was the benefits of this model of society, because there are a lot of things what we love, what we like, what we experience, enjoy every day in this developmentist model of society, to build on that, to maybe reconstruct things which have been destroyed by development, more solidarity, more conviviality, more interaction between the people and stuff like that. But also not to go back to the past. Build on the past, what we have now, and construct new things. In particular, I think Degrowth is really about other movements, and we see it in our initiatives and alternatives, what we experience. It's full of creativity. And there is something very central, which is, I think, quite new and fundamental. It's what we call non-violent communication. To implement dynamics in our society, when we learn, we teach to each other how to communicate, how to understand each other in a different way. And it's something which is quite surprising for me, how this question, in particular from an education perspective, was not so much developed, was not so much spoken about in the past. It was, but not as much as it is needed. And in Degrowth, we put the question of dialogue, non-violent communication, in the heart of the project as well.
Vincent, in part, you have already answered the question I am about to pose. People are fundamentally social creatures. Capitalism does not treat them as such. What would be a reasonable measure of well-being? What is a reasonable measure of well-being to you, Vincent Liegey?
Yeah, I would say that with neoliberalism, with capitalism, we made mostly two mistakes. We constructed first a theory which is not understanding that we live on a planet which is called the Earth, which puts us in dynamics that we always have to grow. But we made an anthropological mistake. We saw that human beings are rational animals, that human beings are only interested in their self-interest, which is partly right, but which is not about that. And degrowth is really about to assume that human being you cannot modelize human being. You cannot put human being or human dynamics or interaction and everything in a box. And I think we need indicators, we need models, not to put that human beings in these models, but to have some understanding of what's happening. For example, there is an indicator, which is, I think, quite interesting, that's the environmental footprint. Questioning whether our way of life is sustainable or not. And if we are above one planet, it means that we are exploiting other people somewhere else on Earth. We are destroying the environment. But even if such indicators are interesting, and I can speak about other indicators, I think it's very dangerous to substitute to GDP with other indicators, because an indicator is always subjective. There is behind an indicator some ideology, and it could be dangerous to try to construct the most perfect indicator, because you cannot have an indicator which will say whether you are happy now to talk with me or not. Life is much more complex, and it could be a dangerous indicator when we enter again into a type of cultural imperialistic approach, what we did with development, with GDP and everything. So we need indicators not to implement dynamics in the society, but we need indicator to have sometimes some pictures, some understanding of where we are, what we do. And we have to be very careful with indicators, and on the contrary, to assume that life is much more complex than a mathematical, economic or social model.
I do not wish to be provocative. I'm genuinely that is genuinely interested in your opinion. Could degrowth be a credible answer to Europe's current refugee crisis? In what way?
Definitely. And I am very pissed off with what's happened with the refugee crisis in the last months. I'm very pissed off with the hypocrisy of mainstream politicians and intellectuals all around Europe. I am very pissed off with the fact that we had an opportunity to start to question our model of society. And only debate what we could have, it was whether you are for the migrants or against the migrants. And it shouldn't be a question. When you have somebody knocking at your door, which is in trouble, it shouldn't be a question whether you want to help him or not. It should have been immediately, yeah, we have this crisis, we should help the people. And in the meantime, we should question why these people are in such a situation. Why Syrian families took the risk with their children to die crossing the sea to go to Greece, being in the hands of the mafia and the people all around the Balkans, to face after the borders in Hungary, and know it's going to happen in Slovenia and Austria and so on. And we should have questioned that. And the things are interconnected. Because we are making wars in the Middle East. We are making some political interference, manipulation in Middle East and also in most of the South countries for decades. It started with colonization and now it's going on with a post-colonialist system called development, called war on terror or whatsoever, where we need the resources from these countries to sustain our economic model, our productivist, consumerist model and everything. And when you start to construct this narrative, on one hand you see that we have a strong responsibility, what we call ecological debt and everything, to help these people. And we have in our hands the solution to stop these dynamics, pushing more and more and more people on the road. And there are much more than the 1 million who arrived to Europe, and the richest region in the world is unable to welcome 1 million, whereas there are tens of millions of migrants all around the south. And if we keep going with our model of society, with land grabbing, with exploitation, in financing dictators, in financing, after financing the dictators, financing another dictator or another movement, taking the power because it's going to serve our interests. What's happening with Al-Assad? Al-Assad family is in power in Syria for decades. And from one day to another one, it became a problem. Not because he became a dictator from one day to another one, there's been a dictatorship for years. Because it started to deal with Russia to have some economic agreements. And that's here we are. We should stop thinking only on this way and question our model of society, reduce our footprint, reduce our dependency on this importation of always more resources, to give a chance to these other countries where the migrants are coming from, where terrorism is coming from, where violence is coming from, to stop making the war. Because we will be free from these countries and let them a chance to self-determine their future.
Vincent, thank you so much for all your insights and your vision. Spoštovani predstavniki, predstavnice sedme sile, beseda je na tem mestu vaša. Ako imate vprašanje, komentar?
I imagine that in this society where growth has become a kind of mantra, you get a lot of opposition from economists. What are their usual complaints and what do you answer?
It's very difficult to debate with mainstream economists because we don't speak the same language. And yesterday we were in the Faculty of Economics. We had a discussion with a collective, student collective questioning mainstream economics and trying to bring other questions in the picture. And no professor came, but it's quite common. Usually when they come to such discussions, they sit in the back of the room and they get pissed off and they don't really understand. And introducing the discussion yesterday, I said that we are not in a faculty of economics or we are not in a university, but we are like in new church. it's based on a lot of beliefs constructed on false assumption. And to quote Professor Serjatush, who is one of the most inspiring degrowth thinker from France, who I say used to be an economist. He's a professor of economics in one of the university of Paris and everything. He said that the main goal is not to reform economic science, but to get rid of the religion of economics. And it's very difficult to, when you speak about belief, to have constructive debates. But still we should implement discussion. We spoke about Nicholas Georgescu-Roegen with his fantastic article from 1967, The Entropy Law and the Economics Process. In his article, he physically questions assumption on which economics is constructed and taught, still taught in the faculties of economics and everything. So we need to implement discussion, but it's very difficult because we are not on the same level of discussion.
Zdite se prepričani v svojem malku. Prisrčno se vam zahvaljujem za pozornost. Once again, Vincent Liegey, thank you so much for everything. Hvala vam za izkazano podporo, preprosto zato, ker ste tu. Vse dobro vam želim, sem hotela reči, in se vidimo v naslednji evoluciji. Pa naj ostaja odprto, bodite nezaslišano lepo, srečno.